also include on here the active
really allowed the project and the groundbreaking to move forward, that $976,000 from the Jobs Ohio Vibrant Community Grant. So very excited, and I love that picture. So this is Albany, so it doesn't really directly impact the city of Athens, but indirectly will impact the city of Athens. We are working with the village of Albany on an industrial park out there right by the airport. And that kind of aligns with the university's plan to enhance capabilities at the airport, which of course will not only impact the village Albany, but spill over to the city of Athens and really the entire county and region. So some of the things we did there, and I know the mayor of Athens has been particularly supportive of these efforts as well, so thank you, Mayor. This included, this past year, the critical sewer extension and lift station that was completed and funded through county ARPA funds. The Village of Albany has been very impressive in taking initiative to rezone the parcels for B2 manufacturing. They've created a community reinvestment area to incentivize development, the types of development they want to see out there. Our next big thing is securing funding for an access road, a really critical access road that will really make the park a reality. Right now, the only access to that park is through a residential neighborhood. It's just not ideal. So in addition to, the business retention and expansion, site development, here are some other things that our office oversees on an annual basis. The first being the Tax Incentive Review Council. So that is, we are responsible for reporting out on all of the tax incentive programs in the county, including tax increment financing district along East State Street, the enterprise zone agreements that are active, and then downtown redevelopment districts, and then the community reinvestment areas. So I talk a little bit about here the Village of Albany's new CRA this year. Revolving loan funds, we administer both the city and county RLFs as well as a small business micro RLF. It's a big year for the RLF because we realized that we were not discouraging folks from applying, but the application process and the forms required to submit an application were a little disjointed, not very streamlined, confusing. And so we've spent a lot of time working with our loan review committee to improve that application. It will now be in one concise PDF document. It has features like drop-down menus that make it a little bit more accessible and hopefully encouraging to businesses to apply, because right at the end of the day, they are running businesses. If they need gap financing for a project, an expansion project, you want that to be accessible and easy to apply for. So hopefully we'll be doing a big media push either at the end of the month or early January to kind of get that out. And we did receive 3 applications and are working with 3 companies on their application, but didn't have any funded in 2023. And then the Athens County Port Authority, which is also run through the Economic Development Council, is expanding its revenue bond portfolio. So as you might recall, we issued the bonds back in 2021 and 2022 for the Wodo Cooper projects, the housing projects along 682, so that they would get the sales tax savings on materials. And we are looking, again, to participate in the Athens Children's Services Project, which will help make that project much more financially feasible for them. I include this every year, just a list of, and it's not all-encompassing by any means, so if I left someone out, I apologize, but I kind of organize it into our state and federal partners, regional and local partners. We can't do anything without partnerships, especially in our region. So all of these entities up here are critical to the work that we do. And then looking forward, we have our spec building, the Port Authority spec building project out at our existing industrial park in the Plains. The foundation, I believe, was laid this week, and we will have the building in hands in February. So it'll be exciting to see a tangible product once the walls and everything are up. So that's moving along swimmingly, almost too swimmingly. I'm worried that at any point, bad weather, everyone hope for good weather into the winter, but it's going along very well, and we want to, in 2024, secure a tenant for that building. Along the lines of the long-term vision for Albany, how do we continue to work with partners to build an advanced manufacturing training facility out there that it's a lot of acreage. We have over 500 plus acres out there, so the workforce challenge is not going away. So we want to be, when we are attracting companies, it'd be ideal to say, hey, we already have your workforce bucket checked for you, whereas maybe other communities don't. So I'm really focusing in 2024 on, again, an advanced manufacturing training facility, as well as more speculative building development for companies in advanced manufacturing that align with our strategic plan. I mentioned the Athens County Children's Services Bond Project. I mentioned the Access Road in Albany. This one's big, the establishment of a community land trust. I'm not committing to this during this presentation, but it is something I have approached both my boards about, and I'm working with several other community entities to identify what a community land trust would look like in Athens County to support affordable housing efforts, or what we like to now call this missing middle housing development. Just like the workforce issue, the housing issue is a big deterrent when you're trying to attract companies to your community, but also help businesses expand in your community. So, it's something that has come across our desk enough times that we are considering picking it up. Call me crazy. And then lastly, obviously, we want to continue to spend this brownfields money. That $1 million set aside for Athens County, so we can clean up some of our blighted properties and those that need to be demoed and redeveloped. This is my staff. Nothing happens without them. They keep me organized. They're not here tonight, but Selena Cottrell is our project coordinator, and Ricky Samani is our grants administrator. And we are a team, so I give all my credit and thank you to them. And I'm also happy to answer questions. Oh, and Micah, I did get your email earlier. So Micah had asked me about, now that issue 2 has passed, what the economic impact on our community might be and what we can be doing to capture that benefit. And, I probably don't have the best answer for you. I'm not sure we know how things are going to shake out quite yet on a local level, but certainly the jobs that will be created from this new legitimate industry, as well as the price is going to go down. So the money that folks using these products are spending, and hopefully they will save and reinvest in other ways in the economy. And then I'm also curious to see, I wrote it down because I didn't want to get the name wrong, how things will play out with I think it's 36%, or no, 25% of the revenue captured that will go to the Cannabis Social Equity and Jobs Fund. So I'm not just sure exactly what that's going to look like yet, but we will certainly keep tabs on it. Questions?
Questions from council members? Thank you, Molly. I have 3 questions, actually.
I love it. I'm ready.
Just a little bit more information about the Children's Service Project, and then I also, the balance in the revolving loan fund, just so we can do a better job on maybe making people aware of that. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned the $8 million plus in revenue this year, mm-hmm. and just if you remember ballpark, like how that compares with last year.
Last year, I think we were just over $5 million.
Okay, so significant
maybe closer
increase.
To 6, because last year we got that big EDA grant for the spec building.
Okay.
So I was very worried how this year was going to play out. I was like, I don't know if we're going to, mm-hmm. Surpass our funding from last year, but we did. So, okay, the other questions. In the city's RLF, I believe we do semi-annual reports to the state on that. I think we're in the $80,000-$90,000 range.
Okay.
Currently.
Okay.
So that's not, I'm looking at the mayor.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
And it's
I believe it's
there.
around that, though.
Okay.
And the last time we would have reported on that would have been July. So, mm-hmm. Which is plenty to loan out, because the way that that program is written is you can lend $25,000 per job retained or created.
Okay.
And then the first question, Children's Services.
Yeah, just a
I
little
don't
bit
know
more.
exactly what that's going to look like yet. We have just had conversations with the county commissioners and Children's Services on our willingness to participate. We went back and forth for a while to, really discussing whether or not that was part of the Port Authority's mission, given that we primarily support private enterprise. Mm-hmm. And I actually put it out to the Ohio Council of Port Authorities, which we're a member of, and it was an overwhelming yes. If you're able to do this, it's a community project that would be great to support. And so we don't have any specifics at this point as what that looks like. I know that they're doing 2 new buildings, so I can't remember how many they have out there right now. I don't have any plans or anything, but it would be construction of 2 new children's services facilities on their current acreage, their current location.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? I have one more question then.
Sorry. You have to get all your
Well, this
questions
is really
down now.
interesting to me.
Yeah.
The brownfield, you mentioned, so was there a cycle last year? And then
Yeah,
what are the
so-
basic qualifications for that brownfield so we can, this is a way to make people aware of it?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
the
of course.
funds.
So, yeah, the first program the state ran was funded in the last budget bill, and they renewed it. So the way that works is each, it's a little different this year. The program requires a lead entity be identified by the county commissioners. And so, I think we proved that the Port Authority was very successful in getting that money out last year, that we have been appointed the lead entity this year for the brownfields remediation, which includes assessment funds, assessment dollars, and cleanup dollars.
Okay.
And then the land bank has been identified as the lead entity for demolition projects. So it gets a little confusing. You probably saw on my slide that the Follett's building included some demolition. Our funding can go after some interior demolition, but if you have a big demolition project, that would likely go through the land bank and the $500,000 set aside that they get. Basic criteria, if you have a dirty property, please send it to me and we will get our engineers out there to see if it has any asbestos. Lead is asbestos and lead are the two things we usually find that require cleanup because you can't redevelop a property if you have asbestos in lead. So those are two kind of easy ones that we can go after.
Okay.
So yes, please send me sites. We have plenty of money to spend on it.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Appreciate your time. And to the council members leaving us at the end of the month, thank you for your service on council. It's been a pleasure to get to know you guys.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We'll now move on to the business portion of our meeting, and the first item is to establish a quorum, and all members of council are present. Next item of business is disposition of the minutes for the regular session held on November 6th and the special session held on November 13th, 2023. If I could have a motion for the approval of these minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Communications, council did receive a notice from Columbia Gas of Ohio that they will be seeking through the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio a rate for its infrastructure replacement program, which is going to be, and they're requesting an increase of approximately $28.7 million that will be collected. What that will mean is $1.38 a month for the, and I'm not sure I understand what this class is, the SGS rate class, but potentially a increase. And they say they're going to use it to replace the age distribution mains and modern pipes, with modern pipes. So that's the notice from them. Are there communications from other council members? Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to just acknowledge receipt of 13 emails opposing the city's decision to go with Rumpke over Athens Hocking Solid Waste District, or Athens Hocking Recycling Centers, and I believe 3 of those specifically called out our decision to purchase new cans for the city of Athens, being in opposition to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Swank.
Yes, similarly, I've received 14 similar emails. They're split, they're all over the board. Those in favor of the city's decision to work with or grant Rumpke the bid cited fiscal concerns, and on the heels of what you just read us about Columbia Gas, that was one of the things that people cited, just one thing after another. Those on the other side, as you said, just coming in today, quite a few people concerned about the cans and all of that. But it's nice to get those emails. I will say this, I've been very pleased with what's come from the public because everything I've received so far, both in phone calls, texts, and emails, has been very respectful. And that's good. That is a good thing. So you're 13, my 14, that's pretty good citizen input.
Other council members, any other communications that you might have? All right, we'll move on to reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Elias. Okay. Mayor Patterson?
I just have one item to share with council today. This morning, I had the honor of delivering testimony to the Ohio Senate Select Committee on Housing up in Marietta, and having, again, the opportunity to speak to the need for housing, affordable housing, senior housing, the full gamut. There was myself, several mayors representing Southeast Ohio. It was, like I said, in Marietta, so the Senate is out on the road and meeting people where they're at to engage and find out more about what the needs are in the state of Ohio. So, and I gave them full written and verbal testimony today.
Thank you. Thanks for representing us. All right, we'll now move on to ordinances for third reading, and there is only one. 12523, this is an ordinance amending the 2023 appropriation ordinance 15522 and authorizing an interfund transfer, and introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 125-23.
Second.
Thank you, Member Reisner. As discussed at committee and at first reading, this is to transfer funds from the American Rescue Plan Act into our special revenue fund. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay, from council members, administration, or our audience? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have ordinances for second reading, and I will pause briefly after reading the title to see if people have comments or questions. And that can be comments or questions from council members, administration, or our audience members. 11923 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 3, Administrative Provisions, Chapter 3.07, Administrative Departments, Boards, and Commissions, Section 3.07.74, Establishment of Commission, introduced by Councilmember Crowell. And if no comments or questions, we'll move on to 12723. This is an ordinance amending Ordinance 4823, authorizing design, construction, and construction engineering of the Dairy Lane Stagecoach Sewer as part of the City-County Sewer Expansion Project number 317, introduced by Councilmember McCary. If no comments or questions, we will move on to the next ordinance, and that is 12823, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to provide financial support for the operation of the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. If no comments or questions, we'll move on to the next. 12923. This is an ordinance authorizing expenditures for City Hall renovations. This is project number 356, introduced by Councilmember Crowell. If no questions or comments, we'll move on to 13023. This is an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenditures of the City of Athens, Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2024, and is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. And if no comments or questions, we'll move on to 13123, an ordinance authorizing 2024 staffing levels and non-union compensation, repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith and declaring an emergency, and is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. No comments or questions, we'll move on to the next one. This is 13223. An ordinance adopting a fringe benefits package for non-union personnel within the City of Athens and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. And if no comments or questions, we'll now move on to 13323, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract with the Employee Benefits Service Center to serve as the city's third-party health insurance administrator and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Crowell. Any comments or questions? If none, 13423 is an ordinance authorizing a stop-loss, group excess loss, medical insurance contract and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Crowell. If no comments or questions, the next ordinance is 13523, an ordinance amending Ordinance 423, reallocating revenues from the city income tax and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. And if no comments or questions, we'll move on to the next one, 13623. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a one-year agreement with Sunday Creek Horizons, a consulting firm, and this is introduced by Councilmember Grace. If no comments or questions, we'll now move on to 13723. This is an ordinance authorizing the adoption of an agreement with the Athens City Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, Inc., and the City of Athens patrol officers and lieutenants concerning wages and working conditions, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. If no comments or questions, the next ordinance is 13823, and this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor's execution of an agreement with the Athens City Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, and the City of Athens Communications Officers concerning wages and working conditions, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. No comments or questions. We'll next move on to Ordinance 14023, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 11, Business Regulations, to enact Section 11.13, Tobacco Retailer License, adding provisions requiring retailers to obtain a license for selling tobacco products, and is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. I would like to introduce an amendment to this ordinance, and I have some paper copies to share with other members of council here. I think there was one up until okay. And starting out, I would like to first take a moment to thank our law director, as well as our city attorney, Jesse Branner-Hittle, who have spent a considerable amount of time over the past couple weeks working on the specific language of this ordinance and consulting with. I'm sorry.
Is he going to speak this moment? I tell you what, what we usually do is go through the ordinance and the amendment revisions, and then we'll open it up for comments.
Sounds good. You were going through it.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, you were worried. I was going to move right on. No, we'll always give people an opportunity. And so we'll go through this first, and that might help explain any questions you have. Thank you.
I need one more down there.
Okay.
So our law director worked specifically with representatives, advocates, and attorneys from Tobacco 21, as well as the American Heart Association. And so some of their recommendations and clarifications are what are included in the amendment language. To highlight a few things, one is an added definition for a movable place of business, just to sort of keep tight clarity on what is included in regulation of this. And a movable place of business means any form of business that is operated out of a kiosk, truck, van, automobile, or other type of vehicle or transportable shelter that is not a fixed address. And then some clarity was also added to make sure that we have what we would call grandfather clauses in that would. Those are in the sections where it prohibits location within specific distance of a youth-oriented location, business activity, and also within specific distance of other businesses, the youth-oriented facility. That's the word I was working on. And I apologize. I have been awake for a long time. I had a long day of travel today, so my brain may not be working as clearly as I would like. But the restriction for a business that requests a license that is operating within 500 feet of a youth-oriented facility, language added says this restriction does not apply to an existing tobacco retailer holding a current state tax license for the sale of tobacco products in that same location for at least 1 year before the date this section was enacted into law. And similarly, for when a business requests a license that is in operation within 500 feet of another licensed tobacco retail establishment. There's also some clarifying language for the appeals process, and for if a license application is denied or a renewal is denied, then there is a specific process through which the applicant can appeal either the loss of the license or the refusal to issue initially. And then there is a separate process that is not changed, but just for clarity, there is the process that goes to a board, a license appeals board, related to the loss of the license. But then if there are violations noted during the checks from the health department or from code enforcement, and if citations are issued for sales to individuals under the age of 21 or for sales without a license, then there are also administrative fines attached to that. And if the administrative fines are not paid, then the process could progress to an unclassified misdemeanor citation for failure to pay. Or if the business owner or license holder wishes to appeal the issuance of the citation, they feel that they did not violate any of the restrictions of this ordinance, then they could also request to appeal that, and that would then go through the court, and the judge would hear that appeal. But it's a separate process for appealing the loss of the license or the denial of the license, as opposed to appealing the issuance of a citation. And those are the primary just clarifications added, as well as, and this was language that was specifically from Tobacco 21 that explaining that samples are prohibited, and that and just clarity on what the signage needs to be for license holders.
Also 111303B3.
Thank you.
Member Grace.
1113.
That addressed the issue of the 5-year look back.
Oh, yes. Instead of a 5-year look back, it would be a 3-year look back in terms of that an application for a retail license may be denied or failed to be renewed if the applicant was convicted within the past 3 years of any violation of federal, state, or local law, ordinance, provision, or other regulation relating to tobacco products. And that was previously at 5 years, and it's now a 3-year look back.
So we're at second reading, and are
Yes.
you introducing this
I
and
am
making a motion
Yes,
to amend?
I would like to make a
the
motion
ordinance?
to amend ordinance 14023.
We have a second, then we can open it up for discussion.
Second.
Thank you, Member
Okay.
Crowell.
Motion and second.
You're reading.
Now we'll open for comments and discussion, first from council members, and then we will make sure to allow time for audience feedback too. Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. Thank you, Member Grace, for working on this. A couple of questions. The License Appeals Board, Is that an
Yes.
existing board?
It is not, but it is to be established in the same way that we have in a housing appeals board. I believe that's the one that matches in our current code, and that is, if it is needed, then it is created.
I see.
And I can,
Actually, our Housing Appeals Board is a standing board, and so they're there, and they're ready, and they're
I think
sworn.
it's more like the taxi
Oh,
appeal.
Maybe
the
it's
ta-
the
that's
taxi
the-
appeals,
okay.
okay.
the business. So when
Business.
when the appeal is needed to be heard, then
Okay.
yeah, I
Then they
apologize.
form.
But then it is formed, and that board consists of 2 members of city council, the service safety director, and 2 tobacco retailers who are retail license holders, and those shall be appointed by the mayor.
Thank you. May I follow up with another? On our page, the packet page 5, it's 11.13.03, section E. I have no problem with this language if a license is mistakenly issued or renewed. I'm just curious if we have this in other parts of the code for mistakenly issuing a license or renewing a license, or are we trying to move in this would we eventually like to get all of our, do we, it's an interesting, if we made a mistake, then we're going to rectify it. Does that need to be in code? And if so, do we need it for all of our licenses, processes? Just asking the question.
I would say that that's a question for the law director.
I don't know that it appears anywhere else in our code. It's a good idea because I think oftentimes, or there have been times when a license was mistakenly, and it could be like code office gives a rental permit. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be granted to begin with, but it's a good idea. This language came also from Tobacco 21. They were very proactive in giving us feedback, and also the American Heart Association. So this has been well vetted by both those organizations. And next week, I think Member Grace will explain, she hopes to have second reading next week, and Wendy Hyde from Tobacco 21 will appear, and she'll be here in person to talk with you about it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Swank.
Since 2001, the Ohio Investigative Unit has been in charge of enforcing tobacco laws in the state of Ohio. They're the ones who come in and bring in trained underage people to try to get them to buy cigarettes, tobacco products, in an effort to enforce the laws and rules. To the best of your knowledge, in the last 5 years, how many businesses in the city of Athens have been cited for violation of Ohio tobacco laws?
Well, our office would prosecute those cases, and I really don't have a recollection of any in the city, although there may have been one, but I do remember some outside the city.
And the second part of that is, do we have any idea of how many attempts to nail a person have taken place in the last 5 years in the city of Athens?
I don't.
Now, on the liquor side, we would know that. But on the tobacco side, we do not. My point is this: I don't think there's a person in this room, or I would be surprised if there's a person in this room that doesn't think we, as a community, have an obligation whenever and wherever possible to reduce underage tobacco use and consumption. It's a well-known fact that earlier a person engages in such behavior, the more likely they are to have a problem for a significant period of their life. And not only does that affect the health of the individual, but those around them and society as a whole, specifically through our insurance rates, hospital stays, and so on and so forth. The point is, I am very, very, very much in favor of reducing teen and adult tobacco use wherever possible. However, I have a real problem maybe chasing this when, depending on what studies you read, some will actually indicate that teen tobacco use is down, and some will indicate that it's up, particularly as it relates to flavored vaping products, candy. For those of you who were around in the 70s, Boone's Farm and all the other cheap wine that hit the market. I vetted this myself with an individual I often talk to, a judge in Northern Ohio, particularly the part about the look-back period. And his comment was very succinct. I suspect the city will have a fight on its hands when they yank a license or close a business down based on the look-back proviso. I guess I would be very comfortable with this ordinance if there was no look-back period. In other words, that when this passes, for that period forward, it goes into effect. But I have a real problem with changing rules on anything in midstream, and that's what I see this doing. Thank you.
Other comments? Councilmember McCary.
Thank you. My question comes in with 11.13.03, page 4, where we list several reasons why a license may be revoked. My question is that language between points 6 and 7 indicates that this restriction does not apply to an existing tobacco retailer holding a current state tax license for the sale of tobacco. That word current in current state tax license doesn't appear in the 7th point, which reads, this restriction does not apply to an applicant that holds a state license, a state tax license. I'm just wondering about the importance or lack of importance of that word current. Does it need to be in both places for any strategic reason?
I'm rereading that just a moment.
I,
Go ahead, Member Grayson.
I would say
sorry.
good catch, and I think they should be consistent.
Yes, I agree with that.
And I would tend to go with current, including current on both of them, but would defer absolutely to the law directors.
No, I think you're right on that.
Okay, good, thank you. Other comments? Any comments from administration? Okay. Comments from our audience members and, okay, yes. And if you could give us your name and address and if you represent a group, and we'll allow you 3 minutes.
Yep, my name is James Wonky, 55 North Court. Full disclosure, my family does own Silver Serpent Vape Shop. Even though I do not work at the vape shop anymore, I'm here to represent my family's interest in this matter, as well as express our concerns regarding this attempted legislation. I'm going to go ahead and lead out with a couple of facts. I don't know where some of the to the contrary points that you brought up, Mr. Swank, come from, but from the Journal of American Medicine shows that in the year immediately following the implementation of 21 tobacco law, there was a 43% drop in e-cigarette use among high school students. Meanwhile, 17% of high school seniors report drinking in the last 30 days. 13% of high school seniors report drinking 5 or more drinks at once in that time, while 6% of 10th graders reported engaging in binge drinking. So I think if they're reporting them, it's probably actually a little bit higher. To add to that, got a study here, I'd be happy to show anyone who's interested to, that states that nicotine in the absence of combustion has the health impacts of which are no worse than a cup of coffee. New research suggests 9 out of 10 people falsely believe nicotine is very harmful to their health. So, got that one. Then I prepared a little bit of statement because I knew this was going to be a time crunch, so bear with me if I rush through some of it. It seems to me, my family, and our employees, like rather than seeking to address much more relevant and serious, yet the systematically entrenched problem of underage alcohol in this town, in which crimes are committed daily by businesses owned by political elites, we all know, who live here and work here and own businesses, let's instead go after underage nicotine. You might say, oh, people are buying these, buying tobacco and alcohol with fake IDs, and the same can certainly be said for underage nicotine. You know, my family's business has a perfect underage record with both tobacco and alcohol. We represent 3 tobacco licenses and 2 liquor licenses. There was a pending matter where it was proven in court that underage tobacco was sold without intent due to the individual presenting us with fake ID. He was ID'd. Meanwhile, Athens businesses such as Courtside and J-Bar have a combined 10 underage or illegal sale violations, while Crystal and CI have a combined 20 underage or illegal sale violations. Crystal, is either Crystal or CI, one of the two had, I think, a total of 25 state law violations since like 1995. But I guess when your brother's the health department director and your daughter-in-law is the assistant lead prosecutor for the county, you get to play by a different set of rules. These are confirmed instances by law enforcement of selling alcohol to confirmed minors and by repeat offenders. You will absolutely not find any comparable statistics for tobacco. But let's leave that alone and regulate tobacco instead. The body count for alcohol for those who in Athens.
The 3 minutes is up, so if you can kind of summarize.
Okay, the body count also says differently. Tobacco wasn't related for the hit and run at the end of Carpenter. It wasn't related to the 3 high school students who flipped their car on 356. You're not going to find anybody who died of nicotine in Athens County, but there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of arrests over the last decade, and I would say dozens, if not 100 deaths in the same amount of time, all because of alcohol. I think it is ridiculous that you're avoiding the bigger issue and regulating small business, probably the only thriving local business industry, of which all of the local vape shops that have opened in the last 2 years are all minority owned. I mean, I can't think of another industry where you can say, something similar. Just do a Google search. I think it's clear which one's the bigger problem. I think it's clear which one has been around longer, and I'm not sure why we're focusing on this instead. I'll leave it at that. I have a little bit more, but thanks.
Thank you for your
comments. I would love a
comments.
copy of that if you could give me that. That'd be okay.
And if you want to submit the copies of your studies, you can do so by giving it to the clerk of council.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that we have it for the record.
Now, or how does that work?
If you have the paper copy now and you want to share it, that would be fine towards the end.
I'm off like charts and graphs, so
Okay.
I'd be happy to
Okay.
print off the whole study.
Okay.
Anybody who wanted to read
Okay.
it, like
And
I
you
did.
can send it by email, then,
Okay,
the whole
thanks.
study. Thank you. Thanks for being with us tonight. Okay. And are there any other comments from the audience? Okay, so we've had the motion and second to amend this piece of legislation, and so we do need to vote on that amendment. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on now to ordinance 14223, an ordinance amending ordinance 6423, Athens City Code Title I, General Provisions, Chapter 1.03, Code Fees Established, Solid Waste Recycling and Optional Composting Rates, and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by all members of council. And do we have any comments or questions first among council members or city administration? Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Nisley. During reports and communications earlier, I didn't feel the need to be redundant to council members' reports that they'd received more than a dozen emails encouraging us to stick with our local recycling and trash collector and to not contract with Rumpke. But I did want to specifically read one that was related to this ordinance from Jean Cunningham, 40 Graham Drive. I'm writing to urge you to vote no on Ordinance 14223. While the original intention of the contract with Rumpke may have been to reduce solid waste disposal costs for residents in Athens, choosing the contract that includes cans will only ultimately be a poor choice indeed. No one I know wants or needs one of these new bins. I hope that you don't move forward with this. We don't need to take jobs away from local people, and we don't need an infusion of new plastic containers into the town. So based on the fact that some of my colleagues have already pointed out the concern specifically about the bins, the new bins, I wanted to bring that up for discussion to figure out if that is something we have more information we can share regarding the rationale.
Okay, and we have Councilmember Reisner and then Councilmember Swank. Yes.
Just to be clear, the 142-23 is, we're talking about fees and rates. We're not talking about cans. We're not talking about who gets the contract or who doesn't. We're not talking about anything other than rates. I think we should keep the conversation focused on that. I mean, we could get off on tangents all night long if you want, but I don't want to be here all night.
Councilmember.
And also, one other thing I'm kind of irritated is that I only got 3 emails. I feel really slighted.
Okay.
And I see 2 of the people who sent them are in the audience.
We'll move on to Councilmember Swank and then Councilmember Crowell.
I'm Councilmember Reisner. I'll make sure when I go by the city rec building tonight, I can get Director, put your email address up on the lighted sign. We'll get you plenty of emails tomorrow, if that's okay. I agree with, sir, I'm just being facetious. I do agree with the first part of what you said. Yes, this is not about who gets the contract, who doesn't. It is about rates. But to Member McCary's point, I'd like to take you back to January or February of 2022. And being the former school teacher that I am, we had a little, shall we say, demonstration with visual aids. Laid out the cans up here. And what we were discussing at that time was the fact that if you were a renter and put out a small can, and you were a homeowner and put out a big can, both put out one can, the renter paid more than the homeowner simply because they were a renter. And council thought that was not an equitable situation and successfully passed an ordinance so that regardless if one was a renter or a homeowner, if you put out one can, you paid the 1 can rate. At that time, one of the things I talked about was another inequity, and that was the fact that no matter what size of single can you placed out, you paid the 1 can rate, whether you put out the 30-gallon can or the 60-gallon can. And then we had a lot of people who were basically gaming the system. And my thought at the time was that when we ever get around to the new contract, that we have standardized cans. And I thought it would do 2 things. Number one, it would create an equitable situation. If you put out the 30 or 35-gallon can, you pay the 1 can rate. You put out the bigger can, you pay the 2 can rate. So in other words, you pay for what you throw away. The second part of that was I thought that those who were putting out the big can to save money would probably find a way to get to the 1 can rate. And we had Mr. Stone remembers this very clearly, either a meeting or 2 ago, you point out the fact that the rates had been adjusted because we had well over 100 or 200 people who had converted down. We actually saw this in practice, that people converted down to save money. So when this bid went out, it gave both companies options to bid it with cans or without cans. One thought that I have, based on some of the emails that came in, and I would throw this out, and it would be love to hear the administration's thoughts on this, because again, this is an administrative decision. This is not a council decision. All we're going to vote on next week are rates. The letter of intent has been extended to the company that bid. But my thought would be this, possibly, and I really direct this to the administration. We have approximately between 3,000 and 4,000 blue recycling cans in the city today. Why not allow people to retain those cans? Recycling is not based on the size of your can. Recycling is a support fee that we all pay the same amount. And quite honestly, I don't care how big your recycling can is. If it's as big as the Goodyear blimp, I'm going to give you a gold star. Bigger, in this case, is better. The more recycling we can get, the better. So if someone has the old red, small, or whatever color those are, maroon, Athens recycling bins, and they want to put the recycling in that, fine. They want to use the current 65-gallon can, that's fine. The more recycling, the better. But for the trash part, let's use the standardized cans. The 30 to 35 gallon, whatever it is today, the next size up, which is the 2-can rate, and the next size up again, which is the 3-can rate. We can't have our trash haulers, regardless of the company, going down the street, looking at a house, okay, that's 40 Townsend, they're a 1-can rate or a 2-can rate. We'd never get the trash collected. Like some of you, I had a paper route when I was a kid. It was real easy. You were delivering that paper every day to the same houses. It only took 3 or 4 days to remember who got the paper and who didn't. Trash is only picked up once a week. Unless we put a chip in those cans or on those cans, and as the truck passes, it transmits to something in the truck for billing purposes, we're just going to create an administrative nightmare. And again, by going to the standardized cans, you pay for what you put out. But one final point. By doing it that way, as we have now with the recycling containers, the can is the property and responsibility of the vendor. So if you have a busted can or a bad wheel, the vendor takes care of it. I had a resident on May Avenue call me, Alan, got a busted wheel. I called code office. The next day that wheel was replaced. But if we allow people to use their own cans for trash, and a trash can gets busted or bent, I've actually witnessed this and seen this in my role as a council member trying to sort through people's problems. We have a triangular argument. The customer, the billing office, and the trash company. And nobody wants to take responsibility. By the company owning those cans or leasing those cans, we eliminate that problem and we don't tie up those folks administratively and the can gets fixed or replaced. So that's one thing I would throw out to the administration. And I know we're not going to get these cans probably until February or March. They're not going to show up January 1. It's impossible. But is that, I'm not asking Mr. Stone for a commitment, but is that something within the purview of the implementation of the trash transition? Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I've been on the record being opposed to purchasing new trash cans for all citizens in the city of Athens. I understand Member Swank's arguments on this and others. We've discussed this at length, both here at council and one-on-one. I do not believe that the amount of waste that I generate at my residence is based on the size of my trash can. We are constantly trying to reduce the amount of waste that we have, and we don't create more waste because we have a different size of a can. And then it's a fallacy to think that if we just have the largest recycling can that we can, that's a good thing. Recycling is something that we need to do with our waste management, but we really need to reduce, we need to refuse, we need to reuse all of these things before we recycle. This idea that we can just have as much plastic as we want and purchase everything in plastic and just feel good about it because we can put it in the big blue container is not the solution to our sustainability problems. It's not the solution to our waste management problems. So while I'm a full supporter of recycling, it is a third or fourth option after other measures in order to truly be sustainable. So it's not just a big blue bin solves our problems. And finally, to answer Member Reisner, these rates are based upon adding bins to the contract. And so we are paying more. Our rates are higher because of this bin issue. So it's absolutely part of this conversation. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Spielness.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the comments that have just been presented, and that's really good. So I think that clarifies a number of issues, and I appreciate that. But if we're stuck with having to get new cans, that's a whole lot of cans that will have to be replaced. And what's going to become of them? Do they take them back and recycle them? Are we supposed to reuse them somehow? What's going to happen to them? I think that's a really important question. I'm asking.
All right, and do you have a response at this time, Mayor Patterson?
You're referencing the recycling bins, is that correct?
Well, whatever bins that we're supposed to give up in order to get standardized cans, what are we supposed to do with those old cans?
That's a question for the Service Safety Director. I can answer that. We haven't quite gotten through the instructions that will go to residents for disposal or keeping of their old cans. Where we're landing, I mean, we have both options, frankly, from the hauler. One option is that a resident is notified that the time is coming for this transition, and they can elect to have the old ones taken away and recycled. The other is the time is coming for the transition, and they can elect to keep and use them for washing their dog or something in their backyard. That is something that would be really an option of a resident. How we message that is something we're going to have to work with the hauler on. And as Member Swank mentioned, it probably will be around the February-March timeframe by the time those come in and we're able to get them delivered.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council members? Yes, Councilmember Swank.
Councilmember Crowe, I could not agree more in your statement about reducing plastic from the source. And in fact, just going to the grocery store and trying to buy something as simple as blueberries, you really don't have an option. We really don't. However, it's one step at a time. And the city, with your support, has taken the first step. And that kicks in on January 1st with the elimination of single-use plastic bags. But that's not the end. That group and others are looking on what's the next step. And I'm not sure what that is. But until that point in time, all this, I went down and bought a wrench the other day. I couldn't buy a wrench off the shelf. It's in 9 layers of plastic. Thank God I don't have arthritis. I would never have been able to get that thing open. I'm not being facetious, I'm being serious. I was forced to buy it. One step at a time. But until we get rid of those things, like we have the single-use plastic bags, it behooves all of us when we buy those items that are encased in plastic that they go in that big blue bin. I agree with you 100%. Plastic at its source is the real issue. But we have to take one step at a time and control what we can control as we can control it.
Okay, I think what we'll do now is open it up to comments from our audience members. I think some people have been here and may want to make a comment, and if you...
But it's not about the codes.
Okay.
Is this my only opportunity?
If, in speaking about the codes and fees as they are related to the city administration accepting the bid from Rumpke, yes.
I don't have anything to say about codes and fees.
She
Okay.
can speak on other items
It-
that aren't on the agenda.
Is it about AHRC? I don't want to bring it up as another item under it. It's closely enough related. We're enacting the fees based on, I mean, I know what you're saying, all we're doing is the fees, but let's face it, it is related to the acceptance of the Rumpke contract. So, and Milena, if you could give us your name, address, if you're representing a group and you have 3 minutes, I'll set the timer.
So I'm Milena Miller. I live at 25 Graham Drive. You all have seen me here before. I'm going to try to keep this really brief. I think that the many meetings we've attended in the past, both as residents of the community, my being a member of the Athens Rethink Plastics group and my contract work with Rural Action, all of the different kinds of people that have been here over the months and months, that we've talked about these different issues concerning the hauling of our solid waste. I don't recall that this trash can issue had been talked about so much before or was included in that. Perhaps I missed that somehow. But I would guess that the community at large, this is going to be a big surprise to them, especially if they're going to have to pay a rental fee, which is what I understood before I came here today. Because once you get into a rental fee, you've probably met these people who pay rental fees for their hot water tanks, and it goes on forever and ever and ever. You never get out of it. But let's be serious, Andy, and I know that the trash cans that we are all using now for either recycling, I say we have to keep our blue recycling bins. It's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. When you're talking about other types of receptacles for trash, I can guarantee you, because I walk a dog in my neighborhood, half of the people in my neighborhood, maybe not half, but a lot of them put their trash in plastic bags at the curb. That's how their trash gets picked up. Their trash, not in metal boxes or containers or whatever. The bottom line is the petroleum industry has screwed all of us, excuse my language, about these plastics. We all know that. We know that the triangle with a number inside is ludicrous. So everybody's plastic bins, that's a lot of hard plastic. It is not recyclable, and most plastic can only be recycled or made into some other product one time. And that big hard plastic is going to go to the landfill, and that's going to be the end of it. And in accepting this bid from Rumpke, you know, we are not looking out to the future in an expanded sort of way enough. Half of the jobs at AHRC will be lost. Those do affect this community, and they will affect our pocketbooks. All of the trash, all of the recyclable trash, recyclable being questionable, that Rumpke will deliver has to go to Columbus. Now, that's a lot of diesel fuel to haul all of that up there. And if you don't think that's part of the bigger problem here in terms of our little sustainability community, I think we're not looking at this in the broader perspective. I realize that, you know, we're down on the wire here, and I understand from one of the council people today that Mr. Stone has really made the effort over the last 6 months to look at that whole government contract sort of option, and it didn't work. It failed.
Milena, your three minutes is up.
So I have other things to say, but I will say this, just in closing. And I'm not representing Athens Rethink Plastics tonight, but to tell you this, we have been, over the last 3-4 weeks, personally soliciting and interviewing 75 to 80 businesses in the entire city of Athens, managers and owners of those businesses, about the plastic bag ordinance. And yesterday, we went to the recording studio, we finished a jingle paid for by the Sierra Club, and it's going to start airing next Monday. So we have done the city of Athens work for them. We have really been out there. So I don't need a pat on the back, but I want you to think about it.
Okay. Thank you, Milena. Marty?
I'm Martha Zinn. I don't live in the city. I live at 13177 Concord Church Road, Northern Ames Township, and I rarely enter any city politics or efforts. But I am here tonight just as an individual because I am very concerned about the solid waste contract. I understand the city council gave its power to rule on the contract to the city administration, which is a very regular thing to do. It is a management issue, not a policy issue. However, in this case, it seems to me that this contract does impact those of us who live in the county, and that is why I'm here. So I just want to appeal to you as city council to monitor and hold accountable the city administration on this and not sell out what has been wonderful community values that are about to be lost, as you know from the last fight on this. So that's really all I want to say is please do your duty as city council and don't just pass the buck.
Thank you, Marty. Okay. Is there anybody else wanting to make a comment about this particular ordinance? Okay. All right, thank you. We're now going to move on to ordinances for first reading, and we have one. And that's 14323, an ordinance approving a then and now certificate for payment to Bronx Overhead Doors and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. We were notified by the auditor's office that they received a bill, a past due bill, which council remembers requires a then and now approval process. So this ordinance is that then and now approval process to pay that prior bill. I will go ahead and read section 1. A then and now certificate in the amount of $4,746 is hereby approved for labor and installation to remove and replace bay door electric operators, add safety features, and installation of photo eyes on each door at the city service garage with no purchase order in place. So this resolves this situation, and I will let council know that this will need to be passed by the end of the year, so we will be suspending the rules at the final reading. Thank you, President Isley.
Thank you. Right. No comments or questions. We'll move on now to a resolution for first reading. This is R 1123, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. And this is introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. This is an annual resolution. I believe this is a 3-reading resolution. Is that correct?
Yes,
Clerk Walker, thank you. And this, again, as the title indicates, the millage rates determined by the Budget Commission, and this includes 2.6 mills for Athens Township and 2.4 mills for Canaan Township. And this resolution will certify these rates to the county auditor. These are unchanged from the prior year. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay, thank you. All right, and if no questions or comments on this, then we will move forward to announcements and other business. And we will be having committee meetings next week. So we need agenda items from council chairs, the committee chairs, or administration for any items. And are we having a special session or not? We talked about it. We have mentioned that. So there will likely be a special session along with the committee meetings. And at the end of this meeting, we do have, and are there other announcements from other council members? Councilmember Ziff.
Thank you, President. Just one thing you had mentioned earlier, discussing with AEP, and we were unsure of what SGS was, and that refers to small general service, referring to standard residential homes. That's what that price was.
That would be Columbia Gas.
I mean Columbia Gas, not AEP.
Okay,
Columbia
okay.
Gas, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other announcements? All right. If not, we do also have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on the agenda tonight. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Have up to 3 minutes. Okay. If not, we'll have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:17 p.m. and we'll